So I guess it would have been, Saturday night at about 7:30, Donald Trump put out a Truth Social post about the state of Missouri. He was all set to endorse and make an announcement as for who was going to be his candidate of choice in the Missouri governor's race. And if you did not see Donald Trump's post, you may have seen the candidates talking about how Donald Trump had endorsed them. Well, that's for one simple reason and one simple reason only. Donald Trump endorsed all of them, by the way. Donald Trump, it wasn't quite like 2 years ago when in the Missouri U.S. Senate race he endorsed Eric, and there were two Erics in the race, so it was absolutely hysterical. Eric Greitens and Eric Schmidt both got endorsed by Donald Trump. He endorsed Eric. Like, literally, that's all his post said. I'm happy to endorse Eric. And then Greitens and Schmidt both went out there and bragged about how they got the endorsement from Donald Trump. And, of course, Schmidt blew him out of the water. But now he comes out and he says here in a post on Saturday night, I love the state of Missouri for every reason in the book. Which book is he talking about, by the way? Maybe John knows, as the Missourian in the group here. Including the fact that it is loaded up with truly great people. I also like endorsing candidates for office if I think they're good, and usually there's a differentiation. Usually a big one, where it's not all that difficult. But Missouri has three great people running for governor, Jay Ashcroft, Mike Kehoe, and Bill Eigel. All have had excellent careers, have been with me from the beginning. They are MAGA and America First all the way. I can't hurt two of them by endorsing one. When you really actually dig into some of these posts by Trump, they're hysterical. For some reason, endorsing is capitalized. I don't know why. He goes on to say, therefore, I'm going to endorse for governor of the great state of Missouri, Jay Ashcroft, Mike Kehoe, and Bill Eigel. Choosing any one of them, and you can't go wrong. That is the post from Donald Trump Saturday night at about 7:30. So, right away, all three guys start bragging about getting endorsed by Donald Trump. So if your social media algorithms were only set to maybe see one of those guys on your feeds, you might have thought that, wow, Donald Trump endorsed Mike Kehoe. Donald Trump endorsed Bill Eigel. Donald Trump endorsed Jay Ashcroft. There was a lot of confusion Saturday night into Sunday morning where people were like, wow, I can't believe Trump endorsed Kehoe. I didn't see that coming. And it's like, well, he didn't really endorse Kehoe. He endorsed all three guys. He said, as Missourians, you can't go wrong. So I've always thought when it comes to Trump endorsements in local races, it's nice. I mean, it certainly makes a big difference if you're the candidate. But I've always felt that nobody knows the candidates like you and I do, especially the ones in Kansas and Missouri. We cover them for weeks and months on end. We know they're good, they're bad, and they're ugly. But I understand if you're one of these candidates and you get the Trump endorsement, that is a huge calling card for your candidacy. But were you really waiting on that? I mean, were you sitting around for the last 2 weeks listening to this show, reading other social media posts, and waiting for Donald Trump to come out and tell you what to do? It's not that you don't value Donald Trump's opinion. It's just he's not going to know more about these races and these candidates than you will. I mean, you can meet these people, right? You can go to your local Lincoln Days dinner, and Bill Eigel and Jay Ashcroft and Mike Kehoe might be there. You can come out to our Politics in a Pints and meet with Jay Ashcroft and meet with Bill Eigel. We never got one with Kehoe, but, just the scheduling didn't work out. You can, and I don't mean this in a weird way, but you can literally touch these people. You can shake their hands. So if you're able to do your homework on this stuff, you don't need to wait for Donald Trump to tell you who to endorse. And by the way, here's the dirty little secret on a lot of these endorsements, and this is just politics. Oftentimes, it will be who's got the back channels to Trump. Who might have some big donors that are Trump donors but are also fill-in-the-blank, candidate donors. That makes a difference. Don't kid yourself. That stuff makes a big difference in the political world. So I was kind of intrigued to see who Trump might endorse, but I was not sitting here waiting on pins and needles because I thought in the end you would know better than Trump anyway who's going to be the next best governor of Missouri. Now, some of you on the text line right now are saying that Jay Ashcroft was mentioned first. Well, I'm not going to read too much into that. I mean, you can if you want. He said Ashcroft, Kehoe, and Eigel in that order 2 times in the post. But, maybe Jay Ashcroft should start doing that. Maybe he should say, not only was I endorsed by Trump, my name came up first on his post on Truth Social on Saturday night. Now, speaking of endorsements, this one also is, I think, pretty meaningful here locally. On Saturday, you had an endorsement in the Missouri governor's race, which is now 8 days away, by the way. I mean, this is now crunch time, so you're going to hear a lot more from guests on this show over the next week or so. You're going to hear from people who are obviously running for office ahead of next Tuesday's primaries in both Kansas and Missouri. Mark Alford, Missouri congressman, 4th Congressional District, he came out and he posted this on social media with his own endorsement in the governor's race.
Missouri needs a conservative governor who can work with President Trump to secure our borders, secure our economy, and secure our neighborhoods and streets. Missouri needs an authentic governor with true business experience who knows what it's like to sign the front of a paycheck and not just the back of one, who can attract world trading partners while deterring foreign adversaries who want to destroy us from within. Missouri needs a trustworthy governor who knows how to saddle a horse. He knows the difference between a bull and a steer and knows firsthand the importance of agriculture in the Show-Me State. Missouri needs a compassionate governor who is a proven leader, a good listener, a faithful friend, a fierce fighter, but a true gentleman who would rather build things up than burn them down. Missouri needs a respected governor who's a visionary, a business builder, a job creator, someone who's willing to take on new challenges, who has the courage and conviction to get things done. Missouri needs Mike Kehoe. Quite simply, I like Mike, and that's why I'm giving him my complete and full endorsement for governor. I'm Mark Alford, and as the U.S. Congressman from the 4th District of the great state of Missouri, I look forward to working with Governor Mike Kehoe and Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, to make Missouri and America great once again.
So that's a big deal here, of course, in the Kansas City area with Mark Alford coming out with his endorsement of Mike Kehoe. Now, you might say it doesn't matter to me, but there are people that will resonate with, especially in the Kansas City area. Not just because, of course, of Mark's congressional ties with him representing the 4th District, but also because of his long career on television and having the name ID that he does in this part of the state. So that was a big development for Mike Kehoe over the weekend. And if I was handicapping this thing right now, I would say Kehoe has a slight edge over Ashcroft and then Eigel. But Eigel is coming on very strong. He's had the controversial ad that you probably have seen while watching the Olympics over the last few days, if you have watched the Olympics, where he's standing there with a Spanish guy who's translating on television that he's going to deport all the illegals. So you've seen that with your own 2 eyes. But don't kid yourself. This thing is going to go right down to the wire, much more so than that U.S. Senate race a couple of years ago in Missouri, which felt like Eric Schmidt was pulling away from Vicky Hartzler and Eric Greitens. Now, on the Kansas side, just a quick note, the NRCC is going to be endorsing in the 3rd congressional race. And it looks like the NRCC, which is the National Republican Congressional Committee, has come out and will be endorsing this morning Prasanth Reddy in that 3rd district race on the Republican side to go up against Sharice Davids. So Prasanth Reddy will be here later this morning to react to that. He is in a primary with Karen Cernovich. She will be on the show tomorrow. But the National Republican Congressional Committee has come out and will come out this morning and make an endorsement of Prasanth Reddy. So they think that he's the best one to go out there and try to beat Sharice Davids. He is a veteran. He is an immigrant. He is a doctor, and he has quite a personal story to tell. 913-408-7957 as we get it rolling. So I just mentioned the Olympics. What are you laughing at?
I'm sure there's a variety of opinions on the Olympics this morning.
Yes. I'm sure there will be, and there are. And I just want to get to it, John. But before I get to it, I know you've got something good for me here.
Oh, well, Trump talking about every reason in the book. They like Missouri. It's the book of truth, obviously.
Oh, it's a book of The Book of Facts for Donald Trump.
Yes,
that's why he loves the state of Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Yes. Oh, gosh. I got to post this on our social media pages, by the way. If you missed it on Saturday night, Trump's endorsing all three candidates, or the three major candidates, I should say, in the Missouri governor's race. The Olympics got a little hairy. The opening ceremony got a little chaotic. Why? And who reacted to it locally? Harrison Butker is not giving up on his advocacy. We'll tell you what happened and what Harrison Butker had to say about it coming up on 95.7 FM KCMO. Saturday afternoon, my phone starts buzzing as I'm getting texts and tweets and messages about what we ended up seeing. I didn't end up watching it, but what many ended up seeing during the Olympics opening ceremony. I guess this actually would have been Friday, come to think of it, because obviously the action's been taking place now for a couple of days over there in Paris. But Friday, of course, opening ceremonies, Olympics are getting underway. And all of a sudden, people are buzzing about the opening ceremonies, which included a shocking scene of drag queens doing a parody of The Last Supper. And right away, I mean, social media started picking up on it and started just blasting the Olympic Committee for allowing something like this and for thinking this was a good idea. Now, here's how this always goes, right? And once again, I didn't see it for myself on Friday night because by Friday afternoon, we all knew what was coming that evening. And I'm glad I knew what was coming because I would not have wanted to sit down with my daughters and say, it's the Olympics, let's watch the opening ceremonies, and then see a bunch of drag queens mocking The Last Supper. And I don't know if you saw this, and I don't know if this was supposed to be the case, but one of the male actors accidentally, maybe not accidentally, I don't know, had his junk hanging out in this Last Supper parody that they did. I mean, it was just filthy beyond all get out. And, of course, the excuse making around this is what? Oh, well, we were just doing this for inclusivity. We were just doing this to make sure everybody felt welcomed at the Olympics. Okay, so we're going to mock Christianity by promoting drag queens through the prism of Christianity. That's effectively what the argument was from the Olympic Committee and those that put this together. The French Catholic Church's Conference of Bishops slammed the scene over the weekend. They said in a statement, quote, the ceremony has unfortunately included scenes and mockery of Christianity, which we very deeply deplore. You had obviously politicians back here at home mocking this as well and knocking this. Elon Musk saying it was, quote, extremely disrespectful to Christians. And even one tech company, Mississippi-based telecommunications company C Spire, said it was pulling Olympic advertising after the opening show sparked outrage. So you look at this and you say, why? Why would they want to do this in a place like France? Well, one of the answers may be the following. When you look at weekly religious attendance in the United States and Europe, I saw this study that was done here over the weekend, and it's data from 2018 to 2022. And it has the percentage of people in all 50 states and then in the European nations that attend church on a weekly basis. In Europe, the average is 14% of Europeans attend church on a weekly basis. In the U.S., the average is 25%. France is one of the least religious countries in Europe. Only about 8% of the French report weekly church attendance. That's lower than the least religious state in the United States, which is New Hampshire, at 12%. And it's well below the European average of 14%. By the way, if you're wondering, Missouri, it's 30%, which is in the top 10 of U.S. states, and in Kansas, it is 26%, which is right in the top 15. The highest state is Utah, as you would expect, at 41%, and then Mississippi at 38%. But the French are just not a religious people. So mocking Christianity to them was probably not all that big of a deal. They didn't really think twice about it because all they cared about was the idea of inclusivity. And inclusivity is not about Christianity or Judaism. It's about making drag queens feel good about themselves. That is their definition of inclusivity. And that's how you end up in a situation where they somehow come to the conclusion that this is a good idea, this is what people want, and in many ways they're so caught up in their own bubble, they're shocked by the backlash. A spokesperson for the opening ceremonies, Ann Descamps, said here in a statement during a press conference over the weekend, clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. On the contrary, I think we really tried to celebrate community tolerance. These people can't get out of their own freaking way. They can't get out of their own way if they tried. It's unbelievable. This is about community. We're going to mock the Last Supper, just to be clear, and call it community tolerance because we've got some drag queens in it and some guys with his stones hanging out of his pants, whether on purpose or not. That's what you had in the opening ceremonies, John. It's ridiculous.
Now, I will point out, lest we be guilty of the you guys thing, that outside of Paris, there's some similar dissent about what they saw in France. So it's more what they call metropolitan elitism, or what we would think of as the D.C., New York, Hollywood axis, if you will, here.
Yes, and I respect
willing me to
that.
go on that. Okay, yeah.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I know that there are plenty of people in France who, rightfully so, are disgusted by their own country's decision. So that is certainly admirable, and I hope they give plenty of crap to their home country. Harrison Butker, he actually put a post up on X about this. He shared the video, and I reshared it. So if you haven't seen it, it's on my X page at Pete Mundo. I just reposted Harrison Butker's post. And he cited Galatians chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. Not 2 Corinthians, as Trump would say. So Galatians chapter 6, verses 7 and 8. He writes here, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For what things a man shall sow, those also shall he reap. For he that soweth in his flesh, of the flesh also shall reap corruption. But he that soweth in the Spirit, of the Spirit shall reap life everlasting." That is what Harrison Butker posted on Friday night after the opening ceremonies got lambasted across the board by many, not just, on certain sides of the political aisle, but across the world, for that matter. Coming up, can we address the childless cat lady drama that is getting traction all over the world, all over the country? That's next. The Tiger King. That's right. Joe Exotic. Hello, Kitty Kitty. Thank you very much for that as we roll back through a Monday morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. Now, cat ladies are all the talk here over the last few days. People are doing their digging on J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's VP pick. He wasn't my top choice. I said that many times over the last week and a half since J.D. Vance got selected by Donald Trump to be his vice president if he gets himself back into the Oval Office. But listen, Trump was feeling himself. He was days removed from nearly getting killed. He was going up in the polls. He was going up against a guy who literally didn't know up from down and left from right. And he felt like, I'm going all in on MAGA. I've got this thing in the bag. Whether or not that is a mistake in hindsight remains to be seen. But J.D. Vance is the guy, and now the media is just slicing and dicing him up, which they were going to do to anybody. But certainly it's a little easier for them to do with J.D. Vance than some of the other people who are getting talked about. So this clip from J.D. Vance on Tucker Carlson's show is getting an incredible amount of attention. And of course, the media is overblowing the whole thing. Here was J.D. Vance a couple of years ago on Tucker Carlson's show that has drawn their ire over the last few days.
It doesn't make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it. What I'm saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
So that comment by J.D. Vance is, being used by the left to try to torch him. And really what they're trying to do is one thing, and one thing only. And that is drive up the gender gap in this election. That's all this is about. I mean, he's got a point. I don't really disagree with the broader point. I think that people who have children are far more likely to make decisions that, even if I may disagree with them politically, there's something about having kids that gives you perspective on the future of your country that you don't have when you don't have children. You know what I mean there, John? It's natural.
Well, it's no longer about yourself, which the narcissist
Yes.
can't conceive. It's
Yes.
about your kids in the future and what you would want for them, saying, hey, we better fix some stuff.
Exactly. And I don't think that's controversial at all. I mean, frankly, Democrats should be using the same kind of litmus test for their own candidates as far as I'm concerned. It's just, having 3 young kids like I do, it's kind of more recent for me in the sense that, the way I perceive my life, my job, my marriage, the country is different in a post-child world than a pre-child world. And that's what J.D. Vance was going for. So, listen, it's not nearly as controversial. It's really not controversial at all because both political parties ideally should be looking for leaders who are not just political leaders of some kind of movement, but they're leaders of their household. They're leaders of their families. What is controversial about that? Nothing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but that's all we've found so far. We're still digging, Pete.
Well, yeah.
A certain amount of this reeks of, that's as good as they've got so far.
Yeah.
Right. And then the cat ladies are all chirping away, right?
Well, yes. And this is what they really want to do. They want to drive up the gender gap, and they want to drive out the cat ladies to vote. I mean, that's a big part of this. They've got to get the cat ladies off the couch, okay? Right now, this will be, if things stand where they are today, the largest gender gap in an election, certainly in my lifetime. You are seeing men break heavily for Donald Trump, and you are seeing women break heavily for Joe Biden. In fact, the lead story on the Wall Street Journal last night wasn't about this cat lady comment, but it all tied together. And the headline was, America's New Political War pits young men against young women. So Kamala Harris is trying to use clips like this from J.D. Vance to drive up the young female vote. You've got to find your bases, and you have to drive home a message and drive them out to vote. And that's what trying to make this clip from J.D. Vance a big deal is really all about. When you look at preference for party and president amongst 18 to 29-year-olds, this was in the story in the Wall Street Journal. Right now, at least as of the most recent polling, women were favoring Joe Biden over Donald Trump by 30 points, 58 to 28. For men, 18 to 29, they were favoring Donald Trump by 14 points, 50 to 36. So that gender gap amongst young people is clear as day. And that's why by getting clips like this from J.D. Vance out there, they're trying to drum up that enthusiasm, John, for the young female voter and really get them to turn out by creating these controversies on things he said years ago on Tucker Carlson's show.
Some of it falls on deaf ears when it's the usual suspects like The View nattering away Joy Reid. But now we've got some new ones coming out. I hadn't seen Jennifer Aniston comment on anything much, but boy, she got onto the cat lady thing. So
listen.
Methinks thou dost protest too much,
Yes. Well, they're trying to use people like that to really
they're trying to enlist more and more, If we're not going to get Taylor Swift, we've got to make up the numbers.
Yep. If you can't get all the Swifties out,
Yeah.
we got to go for,
What's
Jennifer
that girl
Aniston.
on
Who was
Friends? The girl with the haircut on
Yeah,
Friends. What's her
yeah.
name? Somebody call her.
So they're trying to get Jennifer Aniston and some of those folks really worked up over this. And, it might work. I'm not saying it won't work. It may very well work to their advantage. It's a smart political play to play this card, especially as less and less people have children in the youngest demographic. But it also might do the opposite. It might drive more young men towards Donald Trump since they're breaking for him by double digits. That's the thing that we don't really have polling on yet when it comes to the Kamala Harris equation here. All right, so people think, well, she'll do even better than Joe with young women. But what if she also drives more young men towards Donald Trump? Then is it all just a wash? I don't know, but that's a political battleground here over the next 99 days, and we have 99 days till the election, that is going to be worth watching. 18 to 29-year-olds, can Kamala Harris drive up young women numbers enough to make up in some of the places that she is not doing well, which is notably on the male side of the equation? And, the entire party is struggling with men. James Carville, famous Democratic strategist, said as much a couple of weeks ago. We played that audio for you. He said the Democratic Party is just getting destroyed with men, and they're doing it to themselves. But it seems like the Kamala Harris approach is not going to be to try to persuade men to vote for her. It's going to be to drive up numbers with young women. Just like Trump, part of his strategy is to drive numbers amongst his diehard base in more rural parts of the country. Kamala Harris is doubling down on her perceived base, which she thinks is going to be young women. And that's why they're going to play clips from J.D. Vance talking about crazy cat ladies on loop for the next 99 days. And whether or not it works remains to be seen. 913-408-7957, especially if you're in that demographic. I'm outside it now, but I know we certainly have folks who are. You have kids who are. It's got to be impossible for them right now on a lot of fronts, not just in terms of the elections and trying to navigate the political landscape of being in your 20s right now, especially with differences between men and women, but how is it impacting us culturally? That should not be overlooked. And I'll explain that coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Do want to note that 7:30 this morning, we'll be doing candidate call-ins. We are 8 days away from primary day here in Kansas and Missouri, and the reality is we just can't focus on every single local race, and frankly, we're not going to on every single local race. There's too many people running. But what we will do is give folks running in these very local races, county commission, state senate, state house, an opportunity for a 1 to 2 minute pitch on the air. We'll do that segment at 7:35 here on KCMO. So if you or someone you know is running for a very local office that we have not spent a lot of time covering, you'll get your opportunity coming up in about 45 minutes here on KCMO Talk Radio. Now back to the childless cat lady overblown drama of the last couple of days, where J.D. Vance is getting hammered for this old clip on Tucker Carlson where he says, Democratic Party, in his opinion, is being run by too many people who don't have kids, don't have their own children, shall we say. Kamala Harris would say she has stepchildren. She's certainly entitled to that. But this is getting drummed up by the media to drive enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. There are two ways to get people out to vote for your candidate. One way is to just have them love you. The other way is to have them hate your opponents. And it's very clear that the Kamala Harris strategy is very Hillary Clinton-esque, by the way, the I'm with her mentality. That did not work for Hillary, but it may work for Kamala, by the way. I mean, if you think Trump's got this thing in the bag, you're kidding yourself. This is going to be razor thin. The polls have tightened up over the last week, and, the media has obviously done its job going into overdrive for Kamala Harris. And Trump has had some missteps along the way, which we knew eventually were going to happen. But that being said, you look at this and you say, okay, what does this mean for the culture at large? You have young men trending towards Donald Trump in a way they haven't trended towards a Republican in basically 40 years since the Ronald Reagan era. Young people, including young men, have basically voted Democrat going back to 1992. But now you're seeing a shifting amongst young individuals, where the men are breaking harder for Republicans and the women are breaking harder than ever for Democrats. Beyond the politics of this, which of course we just spent some time talking about and is interesting, the culture around all this. We already have a problem where the birth rate is at historic lows. People aren't having kids. People are getting married later than ever before. And now we have this political divide amongst young people in a way we never have had, at least not in modern American times. This is beyond the politics, beyond the 2024 election. It is disastrous culturally for us to have this kind of setup where young women are not going to be looking. I mean, they're going to be despising young men who are Donald Trump voters. And on the flip side, young men who are more likely to be Donald Trump voters or Republicans, they're going to find nothing in common with the crazy cat lady, who all she cares about is like abortion and climate change. So we have this developing culture amongst young people in particular where, yes, this stuff matters for elections, who's going to get young men, who's going to get young women, but how are we going to get these people together? How are we going to get these people to find husbands, wives, to mate, which you need for any country and any civilization to survive? I think about that as much as anything. I've had the chance to spend some time with my youngest brother here over the last couple of days during the weekend. And, he's in his early 30s and he is single. And it is tough sledding out there. I don't envy him at all. I don't envy anybody who finds themselves in that situation right now, navigating the dating world. And, he sees politics a little differently than I do. He's probably more of the RFK Jr. light than he is of the, Donald Trump playbook. But he's certainly not a wokester by any stretch of the imagination. And the reality is, in these divisive political times, it's not like the old days where I think people could get together, and there certainly were plenty of you who probably did marry somebody who was maybe more liberal, you were more conservative, or maybe it was vice versa. But everybody found a way to kind of move beyond that. And that wasn't a defining part of who you were. It was just kind of how you viewed the political landscape. But in these heightened, hyper-partisan times, this is more meaningful than just how people are going to turn out to vote in an election year. There are literally consequences for the country and consequences for our future when you look at how this can all play out. And that, as much as anything, is of massive, massive concern to me. Because what young people are caring about, men versus women, is also dramatically different. When you look at the Wall Street Journal poll, and, women care a lot about, as I mentioned, abortion and climate change. They're more likely to want to forgive student loan debt by 45 points. Men don't think that makes any sense. How about this? Let their kids pick their gender identity. 18 to 29-year-old women, they favor that by 2 points. 18 to 29-year-old men disapprove of that by 33 points. So even if you get to the point where you can get beyond your political differences, if you have children, young women are more favorable by 35 points to want to let kids pick their own gender than young men are. That's nuts. And as far as I'm reading it, all this means is that fewer people will get married, fewer people will have kids, and that will ultimately be disastrous for the future of this country, unless things start to turn around real fast. Next on KCMO Talk Radio, as we get into the 7 o'clock hour, where is this rumor coming from that the city of Kansas City, Missouri, could get involved in ownership of the Kansas City Royals? And does it make any sense whatsoever? We'll get to it on KCMO. Just when you think you've seen all the bad ideas from your Kansas City government. This one is right up there. Good morning. Happy Monday. We're kicking off the week here on KCMO 95.7 FM. We are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Our good buddy, Tony Bateo of Tony's Kansas City, had this exclusive yesterday. Of course, everybody's wondering where the Royals may end up playing, whether it's downtown, whether it is up in Clay County, whether it is, who the heck knows? Do they end up in Nashville, somewhere else? This came from Tony's Kansas City yesterday in a very good editorial that he wrote about that nobody else in town has written about. And it reads as follows here. When it comes to the city of Kansas City, Missouri, possibly considering an ownership stake with the Kansas City Royals, which I can't even think of a time. And I tried to look it up last night. I couldn't find anything like this where a municipality had any kind of ownership stake in a professional sports franchise. I think it's unheard of. I mean, immediately I thought about the Packers, who don't really have an owner. The owners are the fans, the people. But outside of that, nothing came to my mind where a municipality, a government body, had part ownership of a pro sports team. But Tony reports here, per his trusted insiders, that Kansas City, the city, is considering an ownership stake in the Royals that hopes to not only rebrand the tax conversation, but also open up more funding opportunities. This is quite possibly the stupidest thing that Kansas City has ever thought of in my nearly 7 years. And they've thought of some very dumb ideas. You're going to have the taxpayer, if this is correct, and Tony's been damn good. Tony has things that other people in Kansas City media do not have. But you're telling me that the city of Kansas City would potentially have an ownership stake in the Royals to then and I could see this being I can envision the pitch right now. I don't know what the percentage would be, but the city has some kind of ownership stake in the team where then they say, hey, we need this tax, fill in the blank tax, because you're helping yourself, you see? You're helping yourself because now you, the Kansas City, Missouri resident, is theoretically a part owner of the professional baseball team. It's insane when you think about it in any kind of depth, but it's not at all surprising that this would be the road that some of our government leaders would want to at least explore. I'm not saying it's happening. I'm not suggesting it's a done deal. But this is something that Tony reports is at least on the table. Now, by the way, if you're a Kansas City resident, how do you feel about being a potential part owner? You could own 0.0001% of a professional baseball team. John, you could be a part owner of the Kansas City Royals.
Absolutely, huh? I'm thinking of the juxtaposition here when you think in terms and sides. It's the conservatives saying no dollars for sports franchise, no tax dollars for sports franchise. And then if we know who's running the city, then they're in turn saying, let's own the team. It seems odd to me,
Very odd.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like my money to go to a new closer, please.
Well, can't you see, too, the Royals are trying to make a deal at the trade deadline, but the city of Kansas City won't sign off on the trade in time because it's a bunch of dopey bureaucrats,
I'm sorry. Our computer lines are down right now.
Yeah. Right? Something ridiculous like that.
Closed on Monday, things like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. They're shut down at 5 p.m. on the dot. You got GMs trying to make trades at 8 p.m. Sorry, we're back open tomorrow at 9. Call us then. It's that's not how the real world runs, guys. This is not a bureaucracy. But my goodness, Kansas City, and I don't even know if Jackson County is a part of this conversation, but these people can't even figure out how to assess property properly. They're taxing people out of their homes. We want them to be more involved in things like having a stake in a professional baseball team. Are you kidding me? I didn't believe it. On the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, government-owned businesses, what could possibly go wrong? Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. I hope John Sherman's not thinking at all about this. I know John Sherman's got a lot of minority owners, and they're all based around Kansas City. And when I say minority owners, what I mean by that is people who have minority stakes in ownership, for those of you that may need clarification on that. There are many minority owners in and around John Sherman. He's the majority owner, but there's a lot of other people with stake in the Royals ownership group. I hope every one of them calls up John Sherman and says, if you get this city involved in any kind of ownership stake in this team, I'm out. We're out. How could you possibly justify putting anyone in leadership in this city? And by the way, you don't even know who the leadership is going to be. As John just alluded to, you don't know who the mayor is going to be in 2027. It's not going to be Quinton Lucas. It could be some socialist communist. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's someone who's more traditional in values. But with the way things are trending in town, I wouldn't bet on that. But either way, you can't. This is a bad idea beyond the fact that you don't want government involved in your private business at that level. You don't even know who's going to be in charge of the government of the city every 4 years. So how do you possibly plan around that? And if the idea is to get the city involved at some kind of a level and then sell you, the voter, on why you should tax yourself to help yourself as now a part owner of the Royals, then please, I have much more valuable beachfront property in Salina that I will sell you yesterday. I do. Because that would basically be the pitch. Congrats, you're now part owner of the team. Tax yourself to help yourself. It is the most government pitch of all time. Tax yourself to help yourself. So we'll see what comes from this, if anything. But Tony's Kansas City had the report last night that the city of Kansas City, Missouri, could be exploring becoming a potential part owner, whatever that means, of the Kansas City Royals, who we should probably redub, as one of you say on the text line, the North Korean Royals. That would be more appropriate. Can't they just stop? I mean, why can't they just get out of their own way? Nobody is watching the Olympics and saying, I was wondering if Simone Biles or LeBron James or Katie Ledecky were going to endorse Kamala Harris or Donald Trump over this 2-week window. I've been waiting. Who cares about how Ledecky does in the 100-meter freestyle? I really want to know who she's voting for. Said nobody ever, outside of the weirdos who can't take their minds off of politics 24 hours a day. It's unbelievable. So I bring this up because we are a couple of days into the Olympics, and I love the Olympics. I've been watching a lot the last couple of days. Girls have been getting into it. It's been fun. But, man, some of these athletes, they just don't understand what they're there to do. They're there to represent the United States. They're there to represent Democrats and Republicans and independents and libertarians and, socialists and everybody else. And they're there to play their sport. That's it. That's what they're there to do. And I would say this if they were there to talk about how great Trump is. I don't care. Go to the Olympics, win a gold medal, and come home. And then do whatever you want, by the way, on your own time. Come out, endorse candidates, whatever you want to do. But while you're representing the U.S. of A. in Paris at the Summer Games, can you not do what Steph Curry did the minute he got to Paris? NBA superstar, won multiple championships in the NBA with the Golden State Warriors, and talk about how great Kamala Harris is and how she's got your support. Here was Steph Curry.
President Biden gave that endorsement, and Vice President Harris is trying to bring our energy to this campaign, and hopefully if she's on the ticket winning the election, like it's a big deal, to say the least. And she represents the Bay Area. She's been a big supporter of us, and so I want to give that energy right back to her. And just excited knowing, obviously, we're representing our country here, and this is a very monumental next couple months for our country and the direction that we're headed. So hopefully this is a great way to do our part to continue unifying the country with how we, sports brings a lot of people together. And for her in this moment, knowing what's ahead, like, we're just all about positive energy and optimism, knowing how divided our country is right now. So just excited for the journey ahead for her.
Well, that was very Kamala Harris-esque with Steph Curry's comments there, which really didn't make a lot of sense. He might as well have just said, it is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. It was like an endorsement of Kamala Harris, but it was one massive word salad where he's talking about it's going to be a monumental next 2 months for our direction. It's time for us to unify as a country. Sports brings people together, and Kamala has positive energy and optimism. None of that makes any sense. I mean, sports brings people together, so let me divide the American people by talking about how great Kamala Harris is and she's got my support. That's what Steph Curry did. He literally made the case for how sports unify people, which they do in this country, and then went on to talk politics, which is very ununifying right now in America. I mean, we're barely 2 weeks removed from a major political candidate and a former U.S. president coming within a quarter inch of getting killed. But yeah, sports brings people together, so let me opine about politics while I'm here for the Olympics, Steph Curry. Brilliant, really a smart guy. And then his head coach, Steve Kerr, I mean, just another guy who, cries about how he can't take away your guns and all these other things. He came out as well and endorsed Kamala Harris. Can we go back to the 1992 Dream Team for a second? Imagine those guys in that moment, right? You go back to that incredible era of Olympic basketball. Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley.
Clyde the Glide.
Yes, thank you very much there. Mark remembering some of his favorites. Christian Laettner, David Robinson, Scottie Pippen, Larry Bird. I mean, the list goes on. One of the all-time most unifying groups in American sports history, maybe outside of the 1980 U.S. hockey team. Imagine those guys in what was, I understand it wasn't now, but, it was an election year, of course, as it is usually when the Olympics are happening. Imagine those guys going over there and being like, it's time to talk about how much I love Bill Clinton. Old Billy Boy from Arkansas. I just love that guy, man. He's one of us. As they're standing there, getting ready to play in Barcelona for the 92 Olympics after a poor showing in 88. It would never happen. Karl Malone, I mean, any of those guys just going in on it, never in a million years would they think about doing that. But now you've got two things going on. First off, you've got athletes with more money than ever before. They feel more emboldened than ever before. Their egos are larger than ever before. And they feel like they've taken on this larger-than-life mentality. Not all of them, but some of them who want to get into politics heavily feel like they need to use their platform, at the Olympics to do this, to talk about this stuff. And they don't. And why they can't comprehend this concept of come back to the States afterwards and endorse whoever you want to endorse. I don't care. But while you're there for the Olympics, can you just do the Olympian thing and say, I'm here to win a gold medal for the United States, the red, white, and blue. And that applies to the political climate as well. You guys want to ask me about political endorsements when I get back to, the Bay Area and I'm playing for the Warriors? Fine, do that. But not now, John. Not today. Not while I'm trying to win a gold medal for my country during a very divisive political climate. Is that too much to ask?
I don't know if this is on your bingo card, and I never thought I'd say it, but why can't you just be like Snoop Dogg? Right? The guy's showing up cheering for everything, right?
Yeah,
can you just
ain't
be
that
like
the truth?
Snoop and wear the red, white, and blue?
Can we just all be like Snoop Dogg for a day? Come on now. Let's go.
Or shizzle, yeah.
Yeah. That's what we need more of. We need more of these athletes acting like Snoop Dogg. I mean, that guy's just there to cheer on America, baby. And I don't care how stoned he is.
So be careful, athletes.
Yeah. He's got to be a little careful. He's got to be a little careful over there. But overall, he's doing it right. You know, I mean, that's all we want from our athletes. And for those of you saying, well, you were supporting Harrison Butker giving a speech at a private college is completely different on his own time without a jersey on is completely different from Steph Curry sitting there at a podium with Team USA being like, oh, Kamala, oh, man, she's a great unifier. Word salad, word salad, word salad. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Like that, no, those two are not the same. They're not close to the same. And if you think that they're in any way comparable, then, you know, you really maybe aren't as bright as you think you are. I don't know how else to put it. But that's clear as day. These are two very different situations. And if you can't comprehend it, I don't know if I can fully help you here. But yeah, Steph Curry, I know, shocker. And Steph Curry, Mr. Not in My Backyard, you may recall a story from a year ago. Him and his wife were very upset. They were putting apartments down the road from their multi-million-dollar mansion in California. So Mr. NIMBY, Steph Curry, is now all in with Kamala Harris. But, you know, he's basically part of the exclusive Boomer crowd. The NIMBY crowd is very much, you know, Prairie Village, Kamala Harris. Those are her people, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. Now, back here in Missouri, I'm not sure if Steph Curry would have anything to say about the Missouri governor's race, but Bill Eigel is right in the thick of it with Jay Ashcroft and Mike Kehoe. New polling is out. It is showing a very tight 3-person race at the top. Bill Eigel has had the controversial ad of this cycle that we will talk about with him and get into coming up next on 95.7 FM KCMO. And as always, we are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app.